Hey, welcome back to Two Super Guys Trade Stocks. I'm Dylan.
And I'm Vinny. And holy crap, if you follow the news talking about inflation, you're actually starting to see a new word hit the headlines called deflation. All right. And we're going to talk about what that means and what that could mean in the future. Very scary
Gary.
stuff here. As a New England Patriots fan, I grew up here. This is not what we're talking about. Just want to make this clear. There's no deflation of balls going on here. All right.
Well,
So, what exactly is deflation? All right? It's when the prices of goods and services generally decrease over time instead of increasing. It's not something that any of us have experienced in our lifetimes in any meaningful way, right?
yes.
It's like a perpetual sale. Crazy, right?
Yes, makes sense. Prices
So,
aren't going lower.
yeah, the psychology of it can be kind of crazy though. If you start thinking about, if I don't buy that today and I wait like 3 weeks and it's going to be like 5% cheaper, what am I going to want to do? I'm
Not
going to
buy
want to
anything.
Yeah. And when you have an economy that runs 70% of it is on consumer spending in the United States of America, largest economy in the world, yeah, a lot of consumers, if they start catching on to that, it could be pretty scary.
But, but, what if you also have that same economy who has the lowest saving levels in, I don't know, 20 years and the highest credit card debt in history?
Good
Maybe
point.
saving would be good.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, for the individual, yes. For the economy as a
For the
whole,
economy,
question.
no, that's true.
So hey, I actually used some AI in this presentation here. This little blurb up here is from AI. I asked about sustained periods of deflation from Google AI, and this is what I received as a response here. The Great Depression, this period of deflation in the 1930s was the most dramatic in U.S. history. Prices fell by nearly 7% per year from 1930 to 1933.
Wow.
CPI dropped a total of 25%. That's what you're actually looking here. This is inflation throughout like the Great Depression. This period of negative numbers several years in a row. Does that sound vaguely
So,
familiar from your history lessons?
yes, what would be crazy about that is if you were like, for instance, buying a car, because it's already a depreciating asset, but it would depreciate even fat. That's crazy, man.
Yeah. I mean, it tends to bring around crazy images like this or that same time period, which is absolutely bonkers. Although, you know what's ironic? I never really noticed that the sign says free coffee and donuts for the unemployed. I guess coffee and donuts are never a bad thing.
Yeah,
But yeah, this is a pretty stark image of sustained deflationary time periods. Now, I'm not saying we're going anywhere close to this because, I don't think so. But just as a reminder of how unusual times can become when you start seeing that word deflation pop up a little bit more.
I have a good
Here's
question
another
for
image from
you at
1931
the
from New
end of
York City.
this.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting too is like the attire was what kind of struck me in this
Yeah,
image. It's like these would be the best dressed people on any street in America at this point in time, but these folks are here lining up for bowls of soup, which is insane about how different our culture is, I guess now. Um, Anyways, all right. So this is the 12-month CPI from the most recent report. Right. You actually have energy was a major driver here. It's crazy, like absolutely dramatic, just how big a swing the energy price movements were here. Obviously, we had a war, we had this massive worldwide pandemic, but just in such like it blows the scale out from all the other categories, right? Because you're looking at headline inflation and then core inflation down here, and it's hard to even like get a good read on the
yeah,
fluctuations because energy is so dramatic in its swings.
yeah. It's pretty wild.
And this is another illustration of energy prices over time down 23%. That's a major driver behind why we're starting to see deflation, right? So when you look at categories that have experienced the most deflation, right? Look at this. I mean, did you realize that apples have come down 14% in the last year?
I do
Not Apple
not buy
stock,
apples.
but apples, like the little red fruit.
Well, Apple's not doing too well today, so
Well,
maybe
okay.
we'll see. But
Yeah.
no,
Fair enough. But I mean, this is something that some people really care about is, category shifting. What categories have had the largest price decreases? Perhaps if you're a peach guy, maybe now you consider buying apples because they've come down so much in price. Yeah.
okay, okay. I do have a good question for you at the end of this.
Sure. Okay. Energy. This is another way of demonstrating what we were talking about in that oil price, but down 12%. For fuel oil, for home fuel oil, basically gasoline down another 10%. A little less so in these other categories, but still deflation. There are multiple categories that have had actual like substantial double-digit deflation year over year, which is crazy to think about.
If only
And then we
car
move into actual
insurance.
items. used cars and trucks. Remember those that time during the pandemic where it was wild? People were like
Yeah.
selling their used cars for more than they paid for them brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah, that those days are over.
I that was the most absurd time I've ever. I mean, that's crazy. That didn't make any sense.
Yeah,
Just supply
it's
chain
just
issues.
yeah, absolutely. It's just crazy to think about how many items are actually in legitimate like deflationary territory now. I don't. Did you realize that there were this many categories that had significant price decreases?
Honestly, no. I knew energy. That one was very, very obvious. I did not know like television's down 5.6%. I did not notice that. Although, okay, but the problem is PC monitors, for instance, also had a massive spike during the pandemic, like an
Mhm.
insane spike. So naturally, they should come down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, televisions are actually one of the first categories to break from when I remember watching. Like, as we started, it was like it's been a year plus that they've been in deflation,
Nice.
actually, which is crazy. Yeah, lots and lots of categories here are just deflating away. All right. Now, why? All right. Prices for core goods, commodities, excluding those related to food and energy, have deflated about 2% since last year, down 2% in these core goods, which is crazy to think about. It's just people are choosing to not buy or to buy different things that have had less significant price increases over time. There was I didn't put any articles in or pieces in here from the article today, but there was an article talking about, food at home versus, dining out, and then the shifts that have resulted from that. A lot of, restaurants are seeing negative year over year same store sales now, including
Hmm.
McDonald's most recent quarter. That's why you're starting to see a lot more value oriented meals coming back into the market. They're having to significantly struggle and fight against the rising prices of food, and the restaurant costs, like I said, had exceeded food at home. And now we're seeing food at home go into a deflationary time period. So it's going to be a real headwind for a lot of these fast casual or fast food restaurants.
So, okay, I understand the risk to an economy for deflation. That makes
Hmm.
sense, right? Because you want people to be buying stuff that fuels the entire economy. However, when you have prices that went up 40%, 50% over the span of 2 years, a very, very short time horizon, I don't see how that would be a problem. I like it. I'm not saying a prolonged 2 year deflation. Not saying that might not go well. But a couple quarters, some of the prices for some things are still absolutely outrageous. And then
Yeah,
I actually just sent you this on Instagram.
I
Did you
saw it.
see that? Yeah, it
Yeah.
was like the best explanation for inflation I've seen. Someone's like, well, if inflation is decreasing, why am I still paying so much money? And the guy's like, well, I gained 11 pounds in 2022, 9 pounds in 2023, and only 3 pounds in 2024.
Yeah,
So the rate is decreasing. I'm still gaining weight.
exactly.
So I, I don't know. I know deflation is always a very scary subject.
So
I don't know enough.
I completely agree. I do not think it is a bad thing at all at this point in time. We've had an absolute bonkers, period of inflation, and prices are coming back to more balanced reality, even despite the fact of the loss in purchasing power of the U.S. dollar. Um, However, I think it's an expectation thing. I think if people start to expect there to be continual price decreases, if people start to see it and feel it in multiple categories, then you can get into a kind of a mentality or a cycle where people are expecting prices to go down. Therefore, they're less willing to spend money today. And I personally been holding off on purchases for a while, like particularly I'm in the market for a vehicle, but I absolutely refuse to pay these prices. Like, no, it's just it's not it's immoral to me at this point. I think.
Yeah, it's I it when you have prices go up that fast, it just seems kind of logical, especially when it was all due to virtually supply chain issues. The supply chain issues no longer there. That's a blanket statement. It wasn't all due to that, to be very clear.
Yeah,
There was also a
yeah, the
lot of money
printing
printed.
press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for like some goods like PC monitors, it was because they just didn't have any, so they went for a
Mhm.
premium. But all right, guys, let us know what you think if we're going to go into a deflationary period.